Lincoln, as a young lawyer, not yet 29 years old, 28 years old, addresses the Young Men's Lyceum in Springfield, Illinois, and they're discussing foreign policy. And he says, "Whence shall we expect the approach of danger? Shall some transatlantic giant step the earth and crush us at a blow?" And then he answers his own question, "Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa could not by force take a drink in the Ohio River or make a track in the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. We are a nation of free men who will live forever or die by suicide."
Wow.
So there's our challenge, right? You want to get self-involved. You want to make your neighbor your enemy. You want to make lots of them. Then you are headed towards that self-destruction that Lincoln's talking about. Mm-hmm. You want to figure out what we share in common, this corny sort of civic virtue, civic energy that comes from the Declaration of Independence, like how you can work together to do it. And, a lot of people who are unbelievable citizens, it's like they go to the school board meeting. They participate in, I live in New England and we have a town meeting and sometimes the biggest decision is whether to buy a new pumper for the fire department. That's a big deal. That's civics. That's dealing with the stuff. And it's also saying, I've got to vote and I have a responsibility as a citizenship to do it. And then we'll save our country. Then if you like the abstraction of disagreement and violence and all that sort of stuff, where suddenly just because your feed tells you one thing that somebody's an enemy, then you're lost.
Yes.
But if you look across the room and you say, I don't share in common that much with somebody who comes from Louisiana and lives in Tennessee. I was born in Brooklyn and grew up in Delaware and Michigan, and now I've lived in New England for the last 54 years. What would we have in common? We share a love of those ideas. We share a love of that process, the pursuit of happiness.
God. Yeah, it comes so much back to like your own integrity with yourself, And I think it's interesting whenever, like, as I'm watching your documentary, it's like you learn that, like, even as you were saying earlier, that this is like the first time that people thought of themselves as not under rule, but of like, it's almost like we were away at summer camp or something, and your imagination started to bloom.
That's right.
Like that's kind of the feeling that I get of those of the first colonists
here. It's so exciting. There's a moment.
It's blooming on somebody else's land as well. It's definitely blooming on Native Americans' land. So I don't want to not say that.
So here's the deal. You ask any school kid, how were the colonists who threw the tea in Boston Harbor dressed? And they say, as Native Americans. Why were they dressed as Native Americans? And they go, to deflect the blame. And you go, no. They were dressing, and it's so ironic and poignant and sad and also ennobling, that we were saying to Britain, we're no longer part of you. The scholar Phil Deloria says, we're Aboriginal. We choose to dress this way because we're severing our feelings and our affections with the motherland because of what you're doing to us.
Wow.
And who do you choose? Oh, the people that you've spent the last 150 years dispossessing of their land. And by the way, are going to spend the next 150 years continuing to dispossess them of their land. So there's a great irony. But there was a point you made a second ago, a little bit later in the Declaration, after he says pursuit of happiness. There's the phrase he says, Jefferson says, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable. It's not that difficult to
Take me through that a little bit, but can you break that down for me a little bit so I can understand it?
So he says, basically, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, meaning heretofore, all human beings have been under the boot of an authoritarian, and basically it's the human lot to just put up with it. And we are creating something new called a citizen. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take that self-examination. It's going to take that self-criticism, which we're so unwilling to do. It's rather criticize the other than ourselves, rather to assume the discipline necessary to have the virtue, getting better as a human being, to be a citizen. But he's putting it right down there. you will devolve back to that state where when somebody comes in who is acting as an authoritarian, you'll go, fine, take it over for me, Mussolini. The trains are running on time. That's all I need is for the trains to run on time. You know, you think that's what it's about? It's not about. We know what the story of tyranny is, and we know what our story is. And our story is not the story of tyranny. And and it never happens with a light switch. It happens incrementally.
Yes.
You know, it's like two frogs sitting in the boiling pot of water, and somebody says, they're still saying to each other, I really like a hot bath, you know, until they're cooked, right? And so at some point, what Jefferson is saying is, do not be so disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, meaning do not put up with the yoke of authoritarianism. Be more active as a citizen and understand that person that you disagree with, we want them to disagree. Remember, we're the first country on earth that didn't establish a religion. Like, almost all of the wars that are fought are over some interpretations of religion or some other such thing that devolves from that. And we were saying, make no notice of it. Thomas Jefferson himself said, if my neighbor believes in 20 gods or no God at all, it neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. And like New York and Pennsylvania have worked into their state constitutions, just not paying attention to a particular religion means you are free from all the tyrannical thou shall rather than this is. Like the thing that you're talking about, that individual responsibility.
That's another them and me.
That's exactly when it is this is and it is an acceptance. Thou shall is telling somebody else how to be and how that's wrong. So the whole story is trying to figure out. You could say that we're a nation in the process of becoming. Like, and what do you want to be? Ever see the movie It's a
You
Wonderful?
should always be a nation in the process of becoming.
Of course. Otherwise, what are you? You are static. You're, Putin's Russia. You're Xi's China. You've just got people telling you what to do, and nobody wants that. You want to develop ideas. You want to pursue science. You want to pursue arts. You want to You want to tolerate lots of different points of view. And right now, we've gotten to the place where we don't even want to listen to another point of view. We only want to hear the information that, oh yeah, that's what I agree with, and not sort of expand ourselves and say, I can listen to someone that I totally disagree with, and I don't have to then make that person the enemy. That's the key to the American experiment.
Yeah. Well, I think even just a conversation like this, man, it's so good for me. Like, it's so good. It takes me out of this, like, I don't get too caught up in the like us and them thing, but it puts me back in a place of like, oh yeah, well, I'm here with a purpose, right? Like, it gives you a purpose of like being a citizen, of being a human, right? Of like a Rubik's Cube that will never be solved, right? It's like, I don't need to win, right? Like, but I do need to keep playing and also be a good competitor and an earnest competitor. And it puts it more back on you, right? It makes the mirror a little bit stronger. I think that's nice.
That is a beautiful thing, and it goes along with your dream of Jefferson wrote that to Adams. They were friends, then they were enemies, and then they were friends again at the end of their life. They both died on July 4th, 1826, 50 years to the moment of the signing of the Declaration, and they both thought the other was alive. Jefferson had died first. Adams survived him by a couple of hours, but just before he died, he said, I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past. And so we shall go on, so we will go on and shall go on, puzzled and prospering beyond example in the history of mankind. And I love that idea that's puzzled and prospering. I gave a commencement address last year at Brandeis University, and I was talking about how we're so preoccupied with these binaries, red state, blue state, Democrat, Republican, young, old, black, white, gay, straight, rich, poor, east, west, north, south. We always have these divisions. They don't exist in nature. They're just arbitrary divisions that we've imposed on things. And so I said, when you look at things and you see how it's going, the opposite of faith is not doubt. Doubt is central to faith. The opposite of faith is certainty.
I was going to say certainty.
Certainty destroys the mystery of this thing that you and I have been talking about. Who wants to stop that unless it's a thou shall. You can't dance, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't, all the things that we're told, or because you do this, you are not a good person, or you are not a real American, or what's a real American? There's got to be that thing that you and I, the essence of what we've talked about, it seemed to me, has been about this incredibly difficult thing, which is self-discipline. Like, I need to actually do the work on myself. I cannot insist that you do the work for you before I'm willing to do it for myself.
But there are people now where it seems like a lot of people are people like the people who have been doing the work and following the rules hypothetically and trying their best to be an American. I feel like some of those people are starting to wear thin because it seems like everybody doesn't want to. And that may be that their idea of what being an American isn't the same as the other people, right?
Well, I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of it has to do with this device in our back pocket and all
That's true.
the atomized sources of information that we have. Like when I grew up, there were 3 channels and PBS, which I worked all my films on PBS, and maybe an independent channel. You basically got your local newspaper that had a staff of lots of people who covered the school board meeting and this. And so people knew what it was. Now, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the late senator from New York here, said, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts, right? We do know that the Battle of Gettysburg happened on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 1863. But what we're now in a situation is, and this is the greatest danger, is that we are being told things that aren't true. And there's not, amongst the exponentially greater number of possibilities of outlets that everyone has, anybody saying, well, actually, that's not true. And so what happens, that demoralization that you're talking about, or that sense that I played by the rules or whatever, it may be more imbalanced by the fact that they have been convinced of a lot of things that aren't necessarily true. 1 and 1 has got to equal 2, right? Except in our faith, in that faith, where 1 and 1 has to equal 3. That we say the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So here are the sum of the parts, and here's the whole. And so what's the difference? That's where we want to spend our lives here, not in parsing how you really don't get it, and you're wearing that, and you've got this thing, you got your hat backwards, so I know exactly who you are. Right? And that's not who I am. And we are all the same. Shakespeare has it when the Shylock in the Merchant of Venice, are we not human, having not eyes, organs, senses, dimensions, affections, fed by the same foods, subject to the same diseases? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? I mean, if you poison us, do we not die? We are all the same. And unless you can stop and turn and not say, oh, you're a radical leftist destroying, and you're looking at this person who's like this Midwestern whatever, or you are a right-wing, fascist, you don't have a chance.
Yeah, you're boiling gay people in your apartment or whatever.
Yeah, yes.
But just shit like that, it's like, what is going, it is crazy.
Well, you think about what happens in an unchecked information world. That is to say, where you don't have the self-discipline of the traditional media outlets.
That was reliable too.
That was reliable. I mean, I would still, when people say, what would you do? I would say, I would watch one of the nightly news of the 3 networks, or all of them if you can get them, and I would read the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or the Washington Post, or maybe all 3, and don't look at anything else, because the other things will tell you that all Democrats are into pedophilia and all, and you just, after a while, you have to go, stop.
Yeah.
This noise is crazy. What you've done is, by telling the lie up on top of the mountain and formed it into this snowball, it's rolled down the hill, and it's now this giant thing where truth is lies and knowledge is ignorance, and everything is the opposite of what it actually is. And what you have to get back is to what is verifiable. And as much as people say, oh, the mainstream media or the lamestream media or whatever it is, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, that are have opposite editorial positions. Their actual papers, if you really want to follow what's going on and pretend that it's not just, oh, well, their interest is this in promoting the elites, it's just, they're actually really good at what they do. And I think if Americans were to sort of say, Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, just in the middle of our tragedy, he said, turn your phones off, turn off social media, because you know what?
I want to have him on here. Yeah, Spencer Cox, I would love to get to have you have a conversation with.
I met him last January at the Governors Association. I was talking about the revolution, and we showed some clips at the National Governors Association, and he came up and he asked a question. He said, you talk about virtue. I want to pursue this question of virtue. And I said, thank God, here's a place where we can have it. But he's the guy who said, turn off your social media. Go out into nature. Hug somebody that you know. Because if you look at it, social media isn't. You ever been in a room of teenagers where they've all got their phones?
Yeah, there's nothing social about it.
There's nothing social about it. It's all an interior dialogue with yourself. It's schizophrenic. It actually creates 1,000 people in you when our object, as we've been talking for the entire time we talked about, is to find out who this person is inside. Who am I?
Yeah.
Is the central question. I start with an easier question, very hard. Who are we, the United States of America? But then inevitably, all of those questions form a mirror. And I don't know if you get out in nature much, but nature is perfect. And nature puts a mirror back to all of your imperfections. And that's tough. A lot of people would rather be, completely occupied by other stuff all the time, rather than say, what is it that I could do that could make me a better person?
Yeah, thank you. Some of these thoughts are so great. A group of friends of mine.
Oh, you've given me just this dream of the future, the pilot light, all of that stuff. Thank you.
Well, it's important that we're thinking about this stuff together. And I would disagree, like on the news outlets that you mentioned, right? I would disagree. For me, I don't need to disagree with you about it. Yeah. But I see when you and I are here talking, we probably have a lot of the very same,
of course,
ideas and hopes. But I don't need to sit there and tell you, hey, I disagree with a news source you might like. It's like, it just shows that like what you're even saying is just like us conversating about something is what really matters.
That's all
this
that
is real media right here.
Exactly. It's when we talk about each other. All I meant about choosing stuff is that you want to make sure that the source is fact-checking itself, that it has its own responsibility, because like when the cat's away, the mice will play. And that's all we have now, are mice out there. And you just need a little bit of people who go, we have to check this to make sure it's true.
Yeah, I wonder if we'll get to a place where there's some sort of a purity test of some, that we could all agree on. I wonder if AI or something in some way gets us to a purity test.
Well, that would be a wonderful unintended consequence, because isn't it supposed to destroy us? Because
I know that's what I'm thinking.
It's going to drive us crazy, and maybe the opposite will happen.
We're going to be data slaves. You and I are going to have pickaxes. We'll be in a bit mine somewhere, and we'll literally be hammering out like statistics from old NBA games, so some guy can upload them for his DraftKings account.
That's right.
That's exactly how it's.
That's where we're going to go.
And years later, your son or some orb that you created will be doing a documentary on that, or your daughter, who you just had a nice time with at the D-Day Museum last year. She will be doing a documentary on you and I,
right,
working as miners in a bit mine somewhere.
I'm running back to New Hampshire so that I can go back to my little tiny town where things work and people are civil and they've got their signs out, but nobody says, you're wrong. They just say, that's what you believe. I disagree with that. It's really, it's good.
I think there's a lot of good places out there that do have a lot of peace in them.
It's so funny that we live in a country that is totally devoted to football, right? Understandably so. Mm-hmm. Every level. Friday night, high school. Saturday, college. Sunday, pro. And if that coach comes up and says, yeah, well, we're okay. You go, he's fired. You go, we really sucked on special teams this time. We really need to do some work here, and we do. And there's a sense of, and we do this in business all the time.
Earnestness.
And we just say,
is that what you're saying?
How do we get better?
I see.
What is it that we did wrong? And so there is that incredible American drive to be super honest and just say, I really messed up here and I can do better the next time. If you think that Tom Brady wins his first Super Bowl and he goes, okay, cruise control for the rest of my career, right? And I'll get 6 more Super Bowls. He is phenomenally dedicated to self-criticism and where you can improve.
Yeah.
If we extended that into our civic and our political world, we would not be in the kind of argumentative mud that we're in right now, where we feel stuck and unable to move and this, and it's always the other person, not me, and I'm in the mud because of you, not because of I stepped in it. It's just, if we brought that ethic of self-improvement, it's what we've been talking all along. It's my response. My mom used to say that to me. You know, if he's got a problem with you, it's your responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
If you've got a problem with him, it's your responsibility, right? Which means I don't need you to change. I need to figure out what it is. If this is worth repairing, which I think our experiment is, then it always begins with myself. And it's so rare to see people, particularly in politics, take a stand that says, you know, a George Washington saying, I'm leaving, I'm giving up power. Or, you know what? My party is wrong in this, right? I am not going to do this.
More people would vote for that guy.
Of course, of course.
I think it's one of the reasons why it's like, I think we're getting down to people don't trust entities for information, right? I think it's one of the problems that you have with news and stuff. And because some of those are, you know, they make money based on advertising. So there's somewhat of a conflict of interest in a way. Not really, it didn't seem like there used to be, but then that kind of evolved. So I think people now are trying to find a person that they believe, right? Because it's easier for them to analyze, right? Like I can figure out if I believe this person, so I'll get information from them.
Well,
whereas I think entities, people don't trust entities anymore as much.